Alright dudes, Shadow of the ERDTREE is out and it's absolutely crazy. But do you know what's even more crazy? The weapon selection in it. No joke, within the first 30 minutes of playtime, you can literally get like a dozen or so very strong and unique looking weapons that can definitely change how you play. Including this very awesome fire and magic weapon that you can get from one of the early on bosses. But it's not the only one, so let's check them out. Let's get started with a very interesting option for faith builds. If you can believe it, we are getting a very good bonk weapon in the DLC. And it's this big black sacred steel great hammer that you can actually get right here from the Church of Constellation as soon as you hit the DLC area. Just follow the road down south. Eventually you're going to reach up north and this is going to have an enemy inside. If you defeat it, it's going to give it to you and you're good to go. But what makes this weapon special is its ability to further buff and gain even more damage from holy imbuements and of course also from the sacred affinity. So once you do get a bit more faith, as you have a C scaling into faith and a D into strength, you can reach some insane damage numbers. About 1600 plus is what I got at the very beginning of the DLC, and with only a couple of scatter tree upgrades, so that would be like 1400 on its own, which is actually very good. You're going to absolutely destroy enemies with this, especially with a Lion's Claw or maybe anything that deals a ton of poise damage. Besides this, its R1 is also very swift, catches enemies off guard very often. It's very quick for a big weapon like this, even though the range is a bit limited as it's not the longest weapon in the game. Going further, we have another one predominantly again for strength builds. This is the Anvil hammer that we saw in yesterday's live stream. I really love this. It comes with some pretty decent scaling, B scaling actually into strength, but it also comes with a bit of faith scaling as well, since you're going to be doing a bit of fire damage in there, but mostly just strength. And it comes with a very unique skill called Smithing Arts Spear. Essentially, you're doing this huge slam in the ground, dealing tons of damage, and then immediately lift the anvil up, causing spears to appear from the ground and impale anybody. And it does say that it disappears instantly, however, I found that it still lingers for like a split second. So it's enough that it hits enemies you might have missed with the initial hit, especially ones approaching at you at that very specific moment. So it's very good at keeping enemies at a distance for some reason because of it. You, by the way, get this from this side of the map, from the Ruined Forge lava intake. It's going to be something you access going south from the big bridge once you go on the other side towards Relana's castle. And once you get here, you do have to navigate a little bit further in the dungeon. Eventually, you're going to reach some of these collapsed archways, go on the other side, and then descend further down until you reach this sort of balcony where you can activate the big drill so that you can use that to go past the lava lake. And at the top, you're going to turn to right, and inside this room, you're going to find the anvil right there very easily. Very much worth it and very strong. At number 3, we have another absolute banger very close to the starting set of Grace in the DLC. This is going to be at the Western Nameless Mausoleum. Right here, you probably encountered the Black Jail Knight, which is an absolute menace at that stage in the DLC. But if you defeat it, it both gives you the Solitude armor set, but also his great sword of solitude. And this comes with an A scaling in strength if you fully upgrade this, which by the way, you're going to want to. It comes with a very special ability that I am keen to love a lot because it just takes enemies by surprise. So it's called Solitary Moon Slash. It's exactly the same move that the boss does against you. You basically unleash this arc of light, kind of like a projectile that works up to like pretty good mid-range over there, but then you can follow up with a strong attack, or with R2 in this case, which kind of does this forward dash immediately followed by a very strong sweep. It's so strong in fact that it just puts even like some of the biggest knights on their backs, making it a very good option against some of the early enemies or any enemy that is annoying and has a lot of defenses. This breaks through defenses so easily. So again, this is part of that paladin build I talked about. It works very well with the initial big black great hammer that we talked about. So if you again guys want to see that build, let me know down below in the comments. So far I think that the moveset on this is very good. It feels quite solid. It is fast. It's also kind of low stance, so as you get close to enemies, you tend to just ignore or at least dodge a lot of attacks that usually go over your head. Otherwise, very fast, very awesome, definitely worth a try. You also get this really intense armor set. I'm not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite. It's called Armor of Solitude, but man, is this heavy. So it's almost like the third heaviest in the entire game. I think that only like the Bull Goat and maybe the Omen armor are a bit heavier, or maybe even the Fire Palette, but it's extremely heavy, so you're going to need a very high endurance build, so probably something with a ton of strength, which by the way, that build we talked about definitely uses, and it looks very awesome. I also really enjoy the fact that it comes with a ton of poise, so like 96 is what you get from it, which is almost as high as the 98 or so that you get from the Bull Goat. It's like just a few points behind it, while being slightly less heavy. Another one from the Remembrance is of course Relana's armor if you defeat that boss. This is one of the most stylish I have seen in any game, to be honest. This is Elden Ring at its best, ladies and gents. An absolutely amazing looking armor. Definitely the one that every knight in the game deserves. I honestly am going to rock this from now on my full build. Anyway, moving on to number 4, I was a bit disappointed about this and the fact that it's not an arcane scaling weapon. It's the Dragon Hunter Great Katana, but because it's a Great Katana, I guess all of these are going to be, well, quality weapons. So it comes with C into Dex and Strength at max level, starts with a D, I believe. But it has a solid Ash of War / skill on it, which is this very interesting Dragon Wound slash. You kind of jump up and then unleash a very interesting sort of flame attack, kind of like how the boss does when you fight with it. So by the way, you will find this right here at the Dragon's Pit. It's actually something you access from the Great Bridge up north, and then just come over here following this path until you reach this destination. And inside you're going to see a huge altar as well as a gaping pit right in front of it. Don't be scared, jump into it, jump into the void, because you're going to get at the bottom where you will find the boss encounter. So once you defeat it, this is what you get from it. Now, I didn't get to fully upgrade this, but I do like the Ash of War on it. And I also believe Great Katanas have a pretty interesting moveset, especially that heavy overhead slash attack can be potentially pretty good, both at dealing damage but also maybe staggering enemies a bit. I noticed that it does a pretty solid job at also staggering enemies, especially if you also use its weapon skill. Number 6, another very interesting option, we have the Death Knight's Twin Axe. Now this is going to be at the very end of this very annoying dungeon right here, which is called the Fog Rift Catacombs. So you can actually reach here by going on the side of the Relana castle right here to the left. But once you get here, there's going to be a lot of jumping puzzles and a lot of annoying things, but especially so once you reach this final room or semi-final room with the enemy trying to shoot at you. Try to go to the other side, defeat it, and then on to the right side of the room, or left if you go from the opposite end, you're going to see there's an entrance which brings you to the final boss area. So this is where you have to go to, descend the third and final level, and eventually you're going to have to fight this very annoying lightning enemy. But this enemy eventually drops this very strong Death Knight's Twin Axes, which comes with the same abilities or similar ones that the boss uses, called the Blink Bolt Twin Axe. And this basically lets you transform into a bolt of lightning, just charge forward, and if you follow up with an R2, you can then unleash a very strong spin attack that completely destroys enemies. I didn't upgrade this fully, just tested this on some low level enemies, but it seems to do a great job at stance breaking them. The next one gets a lot of style points. It's the Black Hand Blade. I kinda wished I loved it a bit more, but it's still pretty decent against some of the trash mobs, or maybe more in PvP. It definitely feels like it's a more PvP suited sort of weapon, but even that, maybe not against experienced users. However, I love the blind spot ability on it. You can, by the way, also duplicate this and put it on other weapons as well. But this lets you kind of do this flanking move, almost like a Bloodhound step, and then follow up with a quick hit. So a very good, solid option to avoid a lot of the enemies early on in the DLC. This literally trivializes a lot of the fights and challenges you might find a bit too annoying early on. And you also get it very easily from the Scorched Ruins right here northeast of it. There's going to be an altar, so you literally find it out in the open, grab it, and you're good to go. But I love this because it's going to get a very good scaling into dexterity if you just put a keen affinity on it. I love it that you can also imbue this with item imbuements and also with incantation imbuements. So Black Flame Blade definitely works on it. And since you can dual wield this with R1 and triangle, you can essentially have it on both the weapons at the same time, despite having only one equipped, if it makes any sense. My only problem with it is that sometimes that blind spot can be a little bit annoying, the way it angles and follows the camera. And even more so, it's not something that's going to stagger enemies at all. I think that stagger is a lot more important in the DLC rather than DPS checks, unless you're very good at dodging and parrying and all of that. Overall, I would say it's a solid option, but it kind of falls off a little bit against the tougher challenges. Another one I wished I liked more was the Perfumer Bottle. Now, there are Perfumer Bottles for literally any source of damage. There's for Lightning, Holy, Magic. I believe there's one with Frenzied Flame. But early, you can find it right here at the camp on the way to Relana's castle on this side, very close to this chest. There's a bunch of other perfumers in the area, but you can get it, and it comes with a very good dexterity scaling. B basically at plus 25, as I'm seeing right here. Now, this has a very interesting move. I think that this has potential to be a very good stagger option. It seems that especially its charged heavy can deal almost 360 AoE, like just stagger, assuming that enemies are not resistant to this type of damage. The way I like using this is to run and use a double charge heavy attack and then immediately follow up with a light attack, which has a very good combo, chaining from one animation to another, deals some pretty solid damage. But if you do charge heavies, it's mostly going to be for stagger. The other versions, of course, are going to be amazing at just stacking the buffs. If you go with like the Rot version, maybe even like the Frost version, or there's even a Poison one very early, by the way, you can definitely cause them build up on a Arcane build. But this one is for dexterity. Obviously the damage is so and so, but I think there's potential for it. And finally, this brings us to the last option, which is Relana's Twin Blades. Now, obviously, this is a boss drop, so you will need to get this from her remembrance, but I love this weapon so much. There are a few things I want to talk about it. First of all, this is a very stat-hungry weapon. As you can see, it literally takes all the 4 main stats. Second of all, its weapon skill behaves almost like the one from Sword of Night and Flame, as in its Moon and Fire stance attack unique skill basically scales of 2 primary stats. One portion of it from Faith and another one from Intelligence. Essentially, the fire attack component gets to scale of Faith, and its missile launch magic attack goes from Intelligence. So the way I would invest points into this is first focusing on strength and dexterity and kind of getting those points up and ready so that your actual physical attacks are strong, and the physical attacks on this weapon are very good. In fact, you have the same attack moves as the boss almost, so series of stabs, very fast, very good at interrupting. And then you're going to want to focus on Faith or Intelligence, either equally if you want to use both the attacks, but like at lower level below 200, I would mainly focus on Faith personally, because I find the fire component of that unique skill is a bit better than the magic missile, just because it deals a very good AoE, very hard to interrupt, and it also deals very good damage and stagger. It's overall the better component in my opinion. If you want range, you can go with something else. Overall, 11 out of 10 in terms of style points. One of my favorite weapons in the DLC. But again, if you know a better one, let me know down below in the comments. In the meantime, thanks much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.